Hey there. I'd like to do an introduction first. Hi, my name is Derek Solberger, data science instructor, and I've been trying out these Advent of Code puzzles. Overall, what I'm trying to do is to, one, solve the puzzles, but also kind of go over how to solve them for a beginner audience. I'm not really an expert myself, and I'm hoping to solve maybe the first 10 puzzles out of the 25 here in Advent of Code 2022. As the screen says, I'm not aiming for efficiency. And at the moment, to be honest, I'm really tired and exhausted. But I'd lose my geek cred if I didn't at least try this out. So let's just go ahead and dive into this. Day 1. Calorie counting. Santa's reindeer typically eat regular reindeer food, but they need at least a lot of magical energy to deliver presents on Christmas. For that, their favorite snack is a type of star fruit that grows deep in the jungle. The elves have brought you on their annual expedition to the grove where the fruit grows. To supply enough magical energy, the expedition needs to retrieve a minimum of 50 stars by December 25th. Although the elves assure you that the grove has plenty of fruit, you decide to grab any fruit you see along the way, just in case. Collect stars by solving puzzles. 2 puzzles will be made available on each day in the Advent calendar. The second puzzle is unlocked when you complete the first. Each puzzle grants 1 star. Good luck. The jungle must be too overgrown and difficult to navigate in vehicles or across from the air. The elves' expedition traditionally goes on foot. As your boats approach land, the elves begin taking inventory of their supplies. One important consideration is food, in particular, numbers of calories each elf is carrying, which is going to be your puzzle input. The elves take turns writing down the number of calories contained by the various meals, snacks, rations, etc., that they have brought with them, 1 item per line. Each elf separates their own inventory from the previous elf's inventory, if any, by a blank line. For example, suppose that the elves finish writing their items' calories and end up with the following list. The list represents the calories of food carried by 5 elves. We know that because there are 4 blanks. The first elf was carrying the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Second elf was carrying the 4,000, and so forth. In case the elves get hungry and need extra snacks, they need to know which elf to ask. They'd like to know how many calories are being carried by the elf carrying the most calories. In the example above, that's the 24,000 calories, which is carried by the 4th elf. Find the elf carrying the most calories. How many calories is that elf carrying? Okay, so this is the example input. Overall, just to summarize it again, Advent to Code, 25 puzzles in this month, December 2022. Each day, 2 puzzles are released. You solve the first one to get access to the second one. The silly theme is you need to collect 50 stars by the end of the month. We are at the very first puzzle. I'm going to save the example in a text file. I'm going to grab my input. Now, each person's input is different, loosely speaking. So even if I get an answer here on video, it's not going to be the same answer you're going to need, so just to say so. So somehow I need to load all these numbers into, I prefer the computer programming language R, into RStudio, and then start adding up some things. So let's see, what might we do? As I'm thinking, let me just go ahead and copy down everything into my script file. We'll start to load things in. The puzzle input. And I just copied some code from last year, so I just need to update that to 2022. And when I load that puzzle input, incomplete final line. Let me just fix that real fast. Turns out my code's going to want an extra line at the end, I believe. So my puzzle input is this list of character strings here. And I need to somehow do what the puzzle asked for, which was separate these into, in the example, 5 elves, and then for each elf, I'm going to add up their rations by caloric content. So let's see here. What I'm thinking is that we're going to take this puzzle input, and wherever there's a space, we're going to separate that somehow. In R, there's a way to separate these. I just don't know it off the top of my head. One thing to consider when you're doing this is if you're going to be solving multiple puzzles, however you solve the first half, or not half, but the first puzzle, you might be able to still extend that to the second puzzle presented on that day. Now for fun, usually there's some sort of twist that comes in the second part. So I do not know what's going to happen in advance. What I think I'm going to do is a very brute force approach. It's not the best idea, but it's day one. Hopefully the puzzle's not too long. And I'm going to grab the sheer number of rows in the puzzle input. Is it characters? So at least I got a vector like this now. I could tell when the strings have numbers in them and when they do not. And maybe n is not the best description here. So this is going to be a number of characters. And brute force it all. I'm going to do a giant for loop. Maybe I'll call this records. There we go. That might make more sense. And we're going to go down to list by going through the records. And just to make sure this works, we're going to print puzzle input the ith record. There we go. So now I have a way of traversing the numbers, basically. And what I want to do is if in the R programming language, I like to use a data structure called a data frame. It helps me keep the numbers in mind. So I'm going to make a data frame. To store the information. And I'm going to make the elf essentially giving each elf a number. And then the calories, we're going to fill in this number later, so let's just say that it's 0 for now. Now you notice I'm using length of records quite often. I might clean up the code by giving that an actual variable name. So what I did was I created a data frame, a spreadsheet if you like. Worst case scenario, there's 14 elves. We're not going to hit that amount. And then what we're going to do is literally go down the list from the example, add up the calories, and then see what happens from there. Okay. So if records is not equal to 0, that is, if there is some information there, we're going to need a tracker. We're going to start with elf number 1. So the calorie for this elf is going to be where that number is at the moment plus the current item on the list. Now, if you look at the right side of the screen, you'll notice that the puzzle input has quote 1000, quote 2000. The data at the moment, because of the way I loaded it, are in strings. They're not as numbers yet. So I'm going to need to change, I'll do a quick typecast here. And otherwise, we're going to move on to the next elf. I really hope this works. Again, I'm feeling kind of exhausted. I have to refer to the data frame. And the code is doing something, but well, the code is not doing an error, but it's not adding up the calories either. And notice that the elf number stayed at 1. The for loop did go through all 14 of my theoretical elves. That's it. And there. Let's add in some print statements just to see what's going on. See if it's actually getting the numbers I want. And it's grabbing a bunch of zeros. Because I'm literally, part of what's happening is I'm grabbing these zeros and I just keep adding them to each other. That's not what I wanted to do. What I want to do is to grab these numbers here in the puzzle input. So these should be puzzle input, like so. Now we're adding up the numbers, but we're not increasing the elf number for some reason. I'm just double checking some of the calculations, and whenever I go through the code again, I'm going to need to reset the data frame as well. So maybe I'll move that down into this chunk here. So my error at the moment is we're adding up all the calories, but I want to separate these by else. For some reason my else statement's not working. Why don't I just make a separate if statement? No. It's weird, it's not evaluating where the empty records are. I put the tracker in the wrong place, didn't I? Whenever you have a tracker, you need to put that outside the for loop. And that's what I wanted. So now if you see the top left of the screen, so it might be small on your side, elf number 1 has 6,000 calories on them. Elf number 2 has 4,000 calories. And like the example said, elf number 4 had the most with them with 24,000 calories. So this runs through the example. And now what we're going to do is switch this over. Well, one more thing I want to show you here. Print the elf with the most calories in terms of supplies has, and then we'll go max df of calories. I don't need these lines printing anymore. The elf with most calories has 24,000. There we go. Just a simple statement just to get our results going. Now that I've worked through the example, all I have to do is switch to the puzzle input instead of the example. Run this. I'm going to get some answer here, and hopefully this will work. And I got the right answer. Sweet. Literally giving myself a pat on the back. I'm partially to wake myself up. I want to thank you for, if you're still here, watching this YouTube video, because I know I have kind of a monotone voice. Alright, continuing on to part 2. By the time you calculate the answer to the elf's questions, they've already realized that the elf carrying the most calories of food might eventually run out of snacks. To avoid this unacceptable situation, oh no, the elves would instead like to know the total calories carried by the top 3 elves carrying the most calories. That way, even if one of those elves runs out of snacks, they still have 2 backups. In the example above, the top 3 elves are the 4th elf, the 3rd elf, and the 5th elf, carrying respectively 24, 11, and 10,000 calories. The sum of the calories carried by the 3 elves is 45,000. Find the top 3 elves carrying the most calories. How many calories are those carried in total? This does not seem all that difficult for most people. I might take some time because I'm me. Fortunately, what I'm thinking is I have this data frame, right? What I need to do is arrange it to sort it from largest to smallest, and then just grab the top 3 numbers. I'm going to call this data frame 2 because I'm so clever. I'm going to take the data frame, going to arrange by calories. Funny thing is, the way that the arrange function works in our programming language, named with a dplyr package, by default it goes from smallest to largest. Almost every single time I want to go in descending order, so I have that. And I'm going to slice by taking the first 3 rows. Now I'm using some code from a code package called tidyverse, so I need to load that in. Some warnings up here, but I don't think we have to worry about that today. So data frame 2. Am I using the slice function incorrectly? Sorry, let me just Google this real quick. Might be able to just, let me instead, maybe I could do an even shorter version where instead of arranging from smallest to largest, maybe I could just ask R just to do most of these steps all at once. I'm going to slice max n equals 3. Of course, R is smart to ask me, well, wait, which column did you want for that? So I'm going to go after the calories. So now data frame 2 looks like this. Literally the top 3 caloric totals for the rations. And then for part 2, let's go with this. Elf trio with the most calories have, and we're going to sum this time, like so. we're going to get this amount. In Advent to Code, it's pretty commonplace to get pretty large numbers. The idea is to almost necessitate needing to make a computer program in the first place. I'm going to submit that. And not quite the right answer. Ooh. Okay, let me double check my code. First of all, I should probably try this back on the example. Sorry about that. Let's make the data frame. Data frame 2 will get these numbers, which the problem said that we would. We're looking at these numbers here. And when I run the code, I'm getting 55,000. I'm supposed to get 45,000. Right? So I could tell that there's something wrong here. 24, 11, 10. I'm supposed to be using df2. I was literally missing the 2 there. Now, there is a possibility that I fixed the problem so fast. Advent to Code, the website, when you go back and try a different answer, there's a buffer time. You cannot just try it over and over again. I think you have to wait at least 1 minute. So that might pop up now. And I got it. Boom. All right. So we did that. We, in the R programming language, found a way to just kind of keep track of everything that's going on. Made a brute force for loop to add up the calories in each of some set of rations. First found a maximum for part 1. Then in part 2, actually added up the top 3 as well. So thank you for joining me on this adventure in Advent to Code, and I guess I will hopefully see you tomorrow.